I was standing in the kitchen when I heard her laughing on the phone. Not the warm laugh I remembered from our early years. This was different. Sharper. The kind of laugh people use when they're sharing a private joke at someone else's expense. "No, he won't even notice," she said, her voice carrying through the hallway. "He never checks the statements. By the time he figures it out, we'll already be back." I should have walked away. I should have given her the benefit of the doubt. But something in her tone made me stay there, frozen, holding a coffee mug I'd forgotten I was holding. "Business class, Mom? Can you believe it? And the hotel is right on the Champs-Élysées." She paused, listening. "Marcus deserves this. He's been working so hard at the firm. This is my gift to him. Well, technically Robert's gift, but he won't see it that way. My name is Robert. I'm 63 years old, and I just heard my wife of 8 years planning a European vacation for her 29-year-old son, using money she assumed I wouldn't notice missing." I set the mug down carefully. My hands weren't shaking yet, but they would be soon. The thing is, I'd already noticed. I'd seen the charge 3 days earlier, 14,047.32s to a luxury travel agency. I'd assumed it was a mistake, some kind of fraud. I'd even called the credit card company, ready to dispute it, when the representative confirmed that yes, the charge was legitimate, authorized by a cardholder on my account. Jennifer, my wife. The woman who'd told me just 2 months ago that we needed to tighten our belts because her dental work was going to be expensive. I'd paid for that dental work. All of it. $200 out of pocket, because she said her insurance wouldn't cover it. Now I was standing in my own kitchen listening to her plan a trip to Paris that cost nearly twice as much, for a son who hadn't spoken to me in 3 years beyond obligatory nods at holiday dinners. I didn't confront her that day, or the next. I did something I'm not particularly proud of, but which turned out to be the smartest decision I'd made in years. I started paying attention. I met Jennifer 8 years ago at a mutual friend's retirement party. I was 55, 2 years widowed, and not looking for anything serious. My late wife Margaret and I had been married for 31 years. She'd died of ovarian cancer, and the grief had been so absolute that I'd convinced myself I was done with companionship. Jennifer changed that. She was 52, divorced, and working as an office manager at a medical practice. She was attractive, yes, but more than that, she seemed kind, interested in my stories, impressed by my career as a civil engineer. She laughed at my jokes and didn't seem to mind that I was set in my ways. We dated for 11 months before I proposed. Looking back, I can see now that I was lonely, that I'd mistaken her attention for affection, her interest for intimacy. But at the time, it felt like a second chance. She had one son from her previous marriage, Marcus. He was 21 when Jennifer and I got married, finishing college, ambitious and charismatic in the way that certain young men are when they've been told their entire lives that they're special. I tried with Marcus, I really did. I paid off the last $18,000 of his student loans as a wedding gift to Jennifer. I helped him with his car insurance for 2 years. When he graduated and was struggling to find work, I used a connection from my old firm to get him an interview at a corporate law office. He got the job. He never thanked me. Not once. Jennifer said that was just his personality. "He's not good with emotional stuff," she'd say, "but he appreciates it. He really does." I believed her because I wanted to, because I'd chosen this life, this family, and I needed it to mean something. The money started disappearing slowly. Small amounts at first, a charge here, a charge there. Things I couldn't quite account for, but that seemed plausible enough. $340 for household expenses, $567 for groceries, $890 for miscellaneous. I'd worked my entire adult life. I'd been careful with money, invested wisely, saved aggressively. By the time I retired at 60, I had a pension, solid retirement accounts, and the house. A 4-bedroom colonial I'd bought with Margaret 35 years ago, now worth considerably more than we'd paid. I wasn't wealthy by modern standards, but I was comfortable, secure. And I'd never been the kind of man who obsessed over every dollar. So when Jennifer occasionally used my credit card for things, I didn't question it. We were married, What's mine is yours, right? But after I heard that phone call, after I knew about Paris, I went back through 6 months of statements. The groceries that cost $567, the receipt showed $191. The rest had been charged at a department store. The household expenses, a furniture delivery to Marcus's apartment, the miscellaneous charge, a payment to a luxury watch retailer. In 6 months, there had been $32,000 in charges I couldn't account for, money that had quietly left our accounts and gone toward a life I wasn't part of. I felt something in my chest tighten. Not anger yet. Something colder. Something like clarity. If she'd ever hesitated before making another charge, before taking another piece of what I'd spent decades building, probably not. The next morning, she was bright and cheerful at breakfast. She kissed my cheek and asked if I needed anything from the store. No, I said. I'm fine. Marcus and I are leaving for Paris on Thursday, she said casually, like she was mentioning a trip to the grocery store. I told you about that, right? She hadn't. I don't think so, I said. Oh. She waved her hand dismissively. Well, it's just a long weekend. He's been so stressed with work, and I thought it would be nice to spend some mother-son time together. You don't mind, do you? I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman I'd married, who was asking my permission for a trip she'd already booked with my money. No, I said. I don't mind. Her smile widened. You're the best, Robert, really. I knew you'd understand. I watched her leave the room, humming to herself, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to argue or demand explanations, or give her the chance to spin this into something reasonable. I was going to do something much simpler. I was going to let her go to Paris, and while she was there, I was going to make sure she understood exactly what she'd done. I explained that I needed to temporarily freeze all joint accounts and credit cards while I sorted out a potential security issue. The representative was helpful, professional. Within 20 minutes, it was done. The second call was to my attorney. His name is David, and we've known each other for 30 years. He's the kind of lawyer who doesn't ask unnecessary questions, just listens and advises. I need to understand my options, I told him, regarding my marriage. David was quiet for a moment. Divorce? Maybe, I said. But first, I need to know what's mine and what isn't. He asked me to send over financial documents, account statements, property records, the deed to the house. I spent the next 2 days compiling everything, and when I finally sent it to him, I felt something like relief. I wasn't acting out of anger. I was acting out of necessity. The third call was the hardest. I called my daughter Emily. Emily is my only child from my marriage to Margaret. She's 37 now, married, with 2 kids. She lives 3 hours away, and we talk every Sunday like clockwork. When I told her what was happening, she was silent for a long time. Dad, she finally said, her voice tight. How long has this been going on? I'm not sure, I admitted. Months, maybe longer. And you're just now figuring it out? I wasn't looking for it, I said quietly. I trusted her. Emily made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I never liked her, Dad. You know that. I tried to be supportive because you seemed happy, but she never cared about you. Not really, she cared about what you could give her. I didn't argue. Emily had always been perceptive, even as a child. And she was right. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know yet, I said. But I needed you to know, in case things get complicated. I'm here, she said. Whatever you need. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at the wall. I thought about Margaret, about the life we'd built together, about how even in her final days, she'd been thinking of me, making sure I'd be taken care of, encouraging me to find happiness again. This wasn't happiness, it was a transaction, and I'd been too blind to see it. I'll miss you, she said, her smile wide and guileless. Have a safe flight, I replied. I watched from the window as she got into the car, as Marcus pulled out of the driveway without a backward glance. And then I went inside, made myself a cup of coffee, and waited. I know the exact moment it happened because Jennifer called me. I let it ring twice before answering. Robert. Her voice was tight, strained. There's a problem with the credit card. Oh? I kept my tone mild, curious. It was declined, at the hotel. They tried running it 3 times and it won't go through, and my card isn't working either. That's strange, I said. I need you to call the bank, she said. And now there was an edge to her voice. Not panic yet, but close. This is so embarrassing. Marcus is standing here. I'm sure it's just a temporary issue, I interrupted. Maybe there's fraud protection. Have you tried calling them yourself? Of course I tried calling them. Now the panic was real. They said the account is frozen. Robert, what's going on? I took a slow sip of coffee. I froze the accounts, Jennifer. Silence. Complete, ringing silence. You what? I froze the accounts, I repeated calmly. A few days ago, after I found out about the trip you booked without telling me, using my credit card, for $14,847. More silence. I could hear her breathing fast and shallow. Robert, this isn't funny. We're in Paris. We need... I know where you are, I said. You're at a hotel you can't afford on a trip you had no right to take, with money you spent without asking. We're married. Her voice cracked. What's yours is mine. Actually, I said, that's not entirely accurate. According to my attorney, there's quite a bit that's only mine. The house, for instance, my pension, my retirement accounts, most of which were established long before we met. I heard her say something to Marcus, muffled and urgent. Jennifer, I continued, you have 2 options. You can figure out how to pay for that hotel room and your flight home on your own. Or you can call someone else for help. But you won't be using my money anymore. You can't do this. Her voice was shaking now, oscillating between anger and fear. You can't just leave us here. I'm not leaving you anywhere, I said. You left. You chose to take a trip I didn't approve and wouldn't have approved if you'd asked. You made that choice, now you get to live with it. Robert, please. I need to go, I said. Have a safe trip home. I hung up. She called back immediately. I didn't answer. She called 6 more times over the next hour. I silenced my phone and went for a walk, and strangely empty. This was the woman I'd thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. The woman I'd trusted, provided for, tried to build a partnership with, and she'd seen me as nothing more than a wallet. When I got home, there were 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages. Most were from Jennifer, ranging from angry to pleading. 2 were from Marcus, both curt and demanding. I deleted them all without reading past the first few words. She has friends. She's not stranded. She's inconvenienced. That's what I told her attorney, David said. And I also informed them that we have documented evidence of over $30,000 in unauthorized charges over the past 6 months. She's not the victim here, Robert. What happens now? I asked. That depends on you, David said carefully. Do you want to pursue this? Because if you do, it's going to get ugly. She's going to fight. She'll claim you're vindictive, that you're punishing her for wanting to spend time with her son. And what do you think? I asked. I think you have every right to protect your assets, David said. And I think she's been taking advantage of you for a long time. But divorce is expensive, Robert. Emotionally and financially. You need to be sure. I thought about that, about what being sure meant, about whether I was willing to go through the process of untangling my life from someone who'd never really been tangled with me in the first place. I'm sure, I said. Robert, we need to talk. I don't think we do, I said through the door. Please. Her voice was softer now, almost pleading. I'm sorry. I should have told you about the trip. I should have asked. I know that now. I opened the door. She looked exhausted, her makeup smudged, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. For just a moment, I felt something like pity. But then I remembered the phone call, the laughter, the casual cruelty of her assumption that I wouldn't notice, wouldn't care. You're not sorry you did it, I said quietly. You're sorry you got caught. That's not fair. Jennifer, I held up a hand. I've filed for divorce. You'll be served with papers in the next few days. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay. Her face went pale. You're serious? Completely. Robert, you can't. We can work this out. I'll pay you back. Every cent. I swear. With what money? I asked. You don't have a job. You've been living off me for 8 years. I'll get a job, she said quickly. I'll figure it out. Just don't do this. Please. I looked at her, at this woman who'd shared my bed, my home, my life, and I felt nothing. You should have thought about that before, I said, before you treated me like I was invisible, like I was just a resource to be used. I didn't. Yes, I said. You did. I closed the door. She stood there for a moment and I heard her breathing, heard what might have been a sob. Then her footsteps retreated down the hallway. She was gone within the hour. David dismantled every argument. He presented the evidence of unauthorized charges. He demonstrated that Jennifer had been employed when we met and had chosen to quit her job 2 years into our marriage, a decision I'd supported financially, but that she'd made independently. In the end, she got a small settlement, enough to get her started somewhere else, but nowhere near what she'd wanted. The house, the retirement accounts, the pension, all of it stayed with me. Marcus didn't attend the proceedings. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he distanced himself from the situation, claiming it was between you and Mom. I wasn't surprised. Marcus had never been invested in our family. He'd been invested in what our family could give him. I'm 65, fully retired, and living in the same house I shared with Margaret all those years ago. Emily and her family visit often. My grandchildren have their own rooms here, decorated with the toys and books I buy for them. I don't date. I don't have any interest in it. I've learned that I'm better alone than I am with someone who sees me as a means to an end. Occasionally, I think about Jennifer. I wonder if she understands what she lost. Not the money, I don't think she cares about that beyond what it could buy. But the relationship, the partnership we could have had if she'd ever actually seen me as a person. I doubt she does. Some people are wired to take, to assume that what's yours is theirs, that love is a transaction where they receive and you give. I'm not bitter about it anymore. Bitterness requires energy, and I'd rather spend mine on people who matter. But I did learn something important. Silence is a form of power. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight to win. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop giving, stop explaining, stop hoping they'll change. Just stop, and let the consequences speak for themselves. It was short, sent through her lawyer. She wanted to know if I'd be willing to loan her money. Marcus had lost his job, and they were struggling. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some lessons you have to learn on your own, and some people will never learn them at all. But that's not my problem anymore. I'm at peace. I have my home, my daughter, my grandchildren. I have dignity. I have control over my own life, and that in the end is worth more than any amount of money I ever spent trying to buy someone's love. It's worth everything. You need to understand the full scope of what I'd invested in this marriage, not just financially, but emotionally. When Margaret died, I thought my life was over. We'd built everything together, our home, our savings, our daughter. We'd weathered her illness together right up until the end. And even in those final weeks, she'd held my hand and told me she didn't regret a single day. Promise me something, she'd said one night in the hospital. Her voice was weak, barely a whisper. Promise me you won't give up on life. Promise me you'll find happiness again. I'd promised. Through tears, through grief so overwhelming I could barely breathe, I'd promised. And for 2 years after she died, I kept that promise by simply continuing to exist. I went to work. I came home. I maintained the house. I called Emily every Sunday. But I wasn't living. I was performing the motions of life without any of its substance. Jennifer changed that, or at least I thought she did. We met at Tom's retirement party. Tom had been my supervisor for 15 years before he finally hung it up. The party was at a local restaurant, nothing fancy, just colleagues and their spouses gathering to wish him well. Jennifer was there with her sister, who worked in Tom's department. She was sitting alone at the bar when I arrived, looking slightly out of place in the way people do when they're at social events out of obligation rather than enthusiasm. "Not a fan of retirement parties?" I'd asked, taking the stool next to her. She'd smiled. "Not particularly, but family duty calls. You?" "The retiree is a friend," I'd said. Figured I owed him at least a few hours of small talk and lukewarm appetizers. She'd laughed at that. A real laugh, warm and genuine. And we'd talked for 2 hours while the party swirled around us. She told me about her divorce. 5 years behind her, she said. And she was better for it. Her ex-husband had been controlling, demanding, impossible to please. She'd finally gotten the courage to leave, she told me, and was rebuilding her life piece by piece. She asked about me, about my work, about my life. When I mentioned Margaret, she'd reached over and touched my hand. "I'm so sorry," she'd said, and her eyes had been genuinely sympathetic. That must have been devastating. It had been, and it felt good to talk about it with someone who wasn't Emily, who wasn't carrying her own grief about losing her mother. We exchanged numbers that night. She texted me 2 days later, asking if I'd like to get coffee. I said yes, better than good. Jennifer was attentive, interested, engaging. She asked about my work and actually listened to the answers. She laughed at my jokes. She seemed genuinely happy to be with me. We went to movies, to restaurants, to art galleries. Simple, comfortable dates that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I could have a second act. That life wasn't over just because Margaret was gone. I introduced her to Emily after 6 months. That dinner had been tense. Emily had been polite but distant, asking questions that felt more like an interview than a conversation. Afterward, Emily had pulled me aside. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" "Sure about what?" I'd asked. "About her. About moving this fast. You've only known her 6 months." "Your mother wanted me to be happy," I'd said, a little defensively. She made me promise. "Being happy doesn't mean jumping into something just because it's comfortable," Emily had replied. "I just want you to be careful." I'd dismissed her concerns. Emily was young, I told myself. She didn't understand how precious companionship was, how lonely it could be to come home to an empty house every night. Now, of course, I knew Emily had been right. She'd seen something I'd missed, or refused to see. Jennifer moved in 3 months before we got married. It seemed practical at the time. Her lease was up and we were spending most of our time together anyway. Why pay for 2 households when we could combine into one? That's when I first met Marcus properly. He was 20 when Jennifer and I started dating, but I'd only seen him a handful of times, usually when he needed something from Jennifer. Money for textbooks, help with his rent, a loan for car repairs. Jennifer always gave it to him. "He's my son," she'd say with a shrug. "What am I supposed to do?" I didn't think much of it then. Parents help their kids. That's normal. But after Jennifer moved in, Marcus started coming around more, not to see me exactly. We'd exchange nods, maybe a few words about sports or weather. But he was there to see his mother, and I was just part of the background. I tried to connect with him. I asked about school, about his major, about his plans after graduation. His answers were always brief, polite, but disengaged. "He's shy around new people," Jennifer explained. "Give him time. He'll warm up to you." I gave him time. Years, actually. And he never warmed up. When I paid off his student loans, Jennifer had been thrilled. "You don't have to do that," she'd said, but I could see the relief in her eyes. "Robert, that's so generous. We're a family," I'd said. Family helps each other. Marcus's reaction had been more muted. A text message. "Thanks for the loan payoff." Not a call. Not a thank you in person. Just 8 words acknowledging that I'd erased $18,000 of debt. I told myself it didn't matter, that he was young, that showing gratitude wasn't his strong suit. Some people expressed appreciation differently, but deep down even then I'd felt a flicker of something. Not quite resentment, more like Disappointment. Jennifer had picked the place, had shown me glossy brochures of white sand beaches and crystal clear water. "It looks expensive," I'd said, and she'd kissed my cheek. "You deserve it," she'd replied. "We deserve it. After everything we've both been through, we deserve something beautiful." She was right, I'd thought. We did deserve it. The trip cost $11,000. I paid for it with money I'd been saving for a new car. Mine was getting old, making strange noises, burning oil. But I could drive it another year or two, I figured. The honeymoon was more important. We had a wonderful time. Jennifer was happy, relaxed, affectionate. She took 100 pictures and posted them on social media with captions about new beginnings and finding love again. I'd never been much for social media, but I liked that she was proud to be with me, that she wanted people to know we were together. Looking back now, I wonder who those posts were really for. Whether they were about us, or about projecting an image of stability and security to the world. Would you be upset if I took some time off? Just to reset, figure out what I want to do next? Of course not, I'd said. We're fine financially. Take the time you need. She'd smiled, relieved. Thank you for understanding. You're amazing, Robert. I'm so lucky to have you. She never went back to work. Taking time off became permanent, though she never framed it that way. There was always a reason. She was looking for the right opportunity. She was considering going back to school. She wanted to focus on the house, on us. I didn't push it. I'd been raised in a generation where one income was normal, where the husband provided and the wife managed the home. And Jennifer did manage the home mostly. She cooked, cleaned, handled errands, but she also spent. Constantly. New furniture for the living room. The old stuff was so dated, Robert. We needed to modernize. A complete wardrobe update. I can't wear the same things I wore when I was working. I need clothes for our new lifestyle. A gym membership she used twice. I'll get back to it. I've just been so busy. I didn't say anything. Money was still coming in from my pension and retirement accounts. We weren't hurting. And I wanted her to be happy. Wasn't that the point? But the spending escalated. Slowly at first, then faster. Dinners out 3-4 times a week. I don't feel like cooking tonight. Weekend trips to see her sister upstate. She's going through a hard time. I need to be there for her. Marcus's car breaking down. He can't afford the repairs, Robert. Can you help him out? Just this once? Just this once became a pattern. A loan for Marcus's security deposit on a new apartment. Money for his car insurance. A gift for his birthday that cost more than I'd spent on myself in 6 months. Every time Jennifer would frame it as temporary. He'll pay you back, she'd say. Or, this is the last time. Once he's settled, he won't need our help anymore. He never paid me back, and he never stopped needing our help. A credit card statement with charges I didn't recognize. $842 at a furniture store, $250 at an electronics retailer, $395 at a boutique I'd never heard of. I called Jennifer into the office. Do you know anything about these charges? I asked, showing her the statement. She barely glanced at it. Oh, those. I got some things for Marcus's apartment. He's been promoted at work and his place was looking pretty shabby. I wanted to help him make a good impression when his colleagues come over. His colleagues, I repeated. He's a paralegal, Jennifer. He works in a cubicle. So? She crossed her arms. You don't think he deserves nice things? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that $2,000 for someone else's apartment is something we should discuss first. Her expression shifted. Someone else? Robert, he's my son. He's family. I know he's your son, I said carefully, but this is my credit card, and I didn't authorize these purchases. You didn't authorize them? She laughed, a short, bitter sound. We're married, Robert. I'm not a child who needs permission to spend money. It's not about permission, I said, trying to keep my voice level. It's about communication, about making decisions together. Fine. She turned toward the door. Next time I'll make sure to ask your permission before I help my own son. She'd slammed the door on her way out, leaving me sitting there feeling like I'd done something wrong. That was the pattern. Anytime I questioned a purchase, anytime I suggested we needed to budget or save, she'd frame it as me being controlling, unsupportive, cold, and I'd back down. Because I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be the kind of husband who monitored every dollar, who made his wife feel guilty for spending money. So I stopped questioning. I stopped looking at the statements too closely. I convinced myself that as long as we weren't going into debt, it was fine. But we were going into debt. Slowly, steadily, almost imperceptibly. Our savings account, which had been healthy when we married, was shrinking. The retirement fund I'd been contributing to for 30 years was smaller than it should have been. I told myself it was normal. Cost of living increases, unexpected expenses, life. I didn't see it for what it was. Systematic, deliberate erosion. Not just my trust in her. My trust in my own judgment. How had I missed this? How had I let it go on for so long? The answer, I knew, was that I'd wanted to believe. I'd wanted to believe that Jennifer loved me. That this was a real marriage, a real partnership. That I hadn't made a terrible mistake in trying to move on from Margaret's death. I'd wanted it so badly that I'd ignored every warning sign, every red flag, every moment of doubt. After I hung up on Jennifer in Paris, after I'd gone for that walk and come back to 17 missed calls, I sat in my living room and thought about Margaret. If she were here, what would she say? I knew the answer. She'd be furious. Not at Jennifer, she'd never even met Jennifer, but at me, for letting someone treat me this way, for sacrificing my dignity, my security, my peace of mind for someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of money. You deserve better than this, she would have said. You deserve someone who sees you, who values you, who appreciates you for more than what you can provide. She was right. I did deserve better. And for the first time in 8 years, I was going to act like it. I went about my normal routine, made coffee, read the paper, worked in the garden, but everything felt different, lighter somehow. Like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. David called regularly to update me on the divorce proceedings. Jennifer's attorney was pushing hard, he said, trying to paint me as vindictive and cruel. They were claiming I'd abandoned her in a foreign country, that I was using financial control as a weapon. They're grasping, David said. They know they don't have a strong case. The unauthorized charges are documented. Her employment history, or lack thereof, is clear. And the fact that she's been living off your income for years while her son, a fully employed adult, benefited from your generosity without acknowledgement. That's not going to play well in court. What about the house? I asked. The house is yours, David confirmed. You owned it before the marriage. She has no claim to it. The retirement accounts are more complicated, but given the evidence of financial misconduct, I'm confident we can protect most of them. And her settlement? She'll get something, David said. That's unavoidable. But it'll be minimal. Enough to get her on her feet, nothing more. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. Marcus called you? He sent me a message on social media. Asked if I could talk some sense into you. What did you say? I told him to go to hell, Emily said flatly. Actually, I was less polite than that. I told him exactly what I thought of him and his mother, and how they'd been using you for years. He blocked me. Despite everything, I smiled. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Emily said. Dad, I watched you after Mom died. I watched you shut down, watched you stop living. And when you met Jennifer, I was so hopeful. I thought maybe you'd found someone who could make you happy again. But she never made you happy. She just made you useful. Her words hit hard because they were true. I should have listened to you, I said. At that first dinner, when you tried to warn me. You weren't ready to listen, Emily said gently. You wanted to believe. That's not your fault, Dad. That's what people do when they're lonely. They believe the best in people even when the evidence says otherwise. I feel like an idiot, I admitted. You're not an idiot. You're a good man who trusted the wrong person. There's a difference. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time thinking about what she'd said. Trust. That was the core of it, wasn't it? I'd trusted Jennifer. Completely. Blindly. Foolishly. And she'd betrayed that trust in the most fundamental way possible. Let her wonder. Finally, yes. Can I come in? No. Silence. Then, we need to talk about this. We already talked, I said through the door. On the phone. From Paris. Remember? Robert, please. I know you're angry, but I'm not angry, I interrupted. Anger would require me to still care. I don't. I'm done, Jennifer. You don't mean that, her voice cracked. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back. Everything, I promise. Promises. She was good at those. Where are you going to work? I asked. You haven't held a job in 7 years. You have no recent references, no updated skills. Who's going to hire a 59-year-old office manager with a 7-year gap in her resume? I'll figure it out, she said. Robert, please, I made mistakes. I know that. But doesn't our marriage mean anything to you? I opened the door then. She looked exhausted, mascara smudged, hair disheveled. For just a moment I felt that old impulse, the desire to comfort, to fix, to make things better. But I pushed it aside. Our marriage meant everything to me, I said quietly. That's why this hurts so much. Because I gave you everything, Jennifer. My trust, my home, my money, my time. And you took it all like it was your due, like I was just there to fund your life and your son's life. That's not fair. Isn't it? I kept my voice level. Tell me one thing you've contributed to this marriage besides spending my money. One thing you've given me that wasn't contingent on what I could give you first. She opened her mouth, closed it. Tears ran down her face. I love you, she whispered. No, I said. You loved what I could provide. There's a difference. Packed what she could fit in her car and drove to Marcus's apartment. I heard later that he'd let her stay on his couch for 3 weeks before she found a room to rent. The house felt strange without her. Not empty, exactly. Just different. Quieter. Calmer. I cleaned out her things methodically. Clothes to donation centers. Personal items boxed up and stored in the garage for her to collect. Furniture she'd bought removed or replaced with pieces from storage. Things that had been mine and Margaret's. Things that belonged to the life I'd had before Jennifer. It took 2 weeks, and by the end, the house felt like mine again. She got $40,000 in the settlement, David said, plus her car, her personal belongings, and half of the joint checking account, which had about $8,000 in it. $48,000 total, for 8 years of marriage. The judge noted the unauthorized charges, David continued. That's why the settlement was so low. Legally, she's lucky she didn't face fraud charges. I never wanted to press charges, I said. I just wanted out. I know, and it's over now, you're free. Free. I tested the word in my mind, it felt right. Sometimes I think about Jennifer, about what she's doing, whether she's okay. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's working part-time at a doctor's office, that she's renting a small apartment, that Marcus moved to another state for work and rarely visits. I don't feel good about that. But I don't feel bad either. She made her choices. She has to live with them. As for me, I made mine too. And I'm finally, after all these years, living with dignity,